program will begin shortly. Launch sequence. Activate. Warning, the following content is not politically correct. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome back to the channel today, everyone. I am Sara Higdon. This is Transform to Freedom. So today is April 1st, right? But be aware that there are not going to be nothing I talk about today is going to be April's Fool's jokes or anything like that. Actually, in fact, I've been trying to stay away from social media as long as I could today, simply because it doesn't, there's a lot of conversation, people making, April Fool's jokes and stuff like that, that really don't, it's probably the worst day of the year for online discourse. Because as you're scrolling half the feed, you're just annoyed because you know that these people are not saying what they mean. They're not saying, they're just trying to make a joke, and it's generally not funny. So we stayed away from social media for the most part today. Yeah. So also, if you guys didn't go watch my episode or watch my video that I released on Friday, it's a very important show, or very important video talking about it's from White Coat. Yeah, see, it's from White Coat Waste. They are here, I'll just pull up their website. They are a animal. Basically, their main goal is to stop animal experimentations, animal abuses. That's the biggest goal right now, and a lot of what they're doing is exposing a lot of the I guess I'm just gonna say, I don't know if I can say it on YouTube, but we've been told that gain of function research has not been funded by the National Institute of Health. Fauci has maintained that we did not do that in a certain lab in China, in front of Senate boards and that's what him and Rand Paul have gone back and forth on. So go check this out, because they've exposed a lot of animal accidents in a lab in that's with Colorado State University. Last fall, they exposed and talked about the amount of taxpayer money that's going to build this bat facility in Colorado. So this isn't like a conspiracy theory or anything like that. It's all well documented, well researched. So, but go watch my video that I posted on Friday. It'll give you all of what's going on here. With the and all the different accidents, but you can see, I definitely would go check out the White Coat Waste website, because it lays it out for you. And I only talked about a couple of these. I only read a couple of these accident reports on the episode. So there's a whole lot more. There's a whole lot more going on. And so definitely go check that out. Check them out across social media as well. Just be aware of what's going on, because we thought, it was bad when we heard about it happening in China. But when it's right in your own backyard, and especially if you live in Colorado, make sure you know what's going on. Yeah, make sure you know. Also, we have an update to this case that we've talked about quite a bit. I don't think we talked about this last week, but the whole next Benedict situation that happened, remember, in Oklahoma. Next was a, quote, non-binary student who got into a fight at school, passed away the next day. The leftist in the leftist media blamed libs of TikTok for the death, blamed bullying for the death. When it turns out, well, one, Next had committed suicide, and then even when that happened, they still said it was the bullying and all that was that made that depressed Next and all that. However, now we have learned that Next was abused as a 9-year-old child by her father. And her father was in jail for this. Let me see. Why won't this scroll down? Scroll down. Okay. James Everett Hughes was arrested in 2019 and charged with the rape of a minor under 14 years old. That happened. It was a crime that dated back to 2017. He was sentenced to sexual assault in the second degree on November 27th, 2019. He was given 5 years in prison. This was reported by the Washington Post, so not really a right-wing organization, right? So it's the same news organization that Taylor Lorenz works for. So that should tell you that. But the thing is, what we find out, the leftist media knew this when they were out blaming libs of TikTok for this. They knew this. In one of the original stories by the Washington Post, it merely noted the abuse history, saying Nex's biological mother was among the mourners. Their father, who was in prison for abuse, was not. So they knew, and they continued this blame of libs of TikTok for this child's heartbreaking death. But so knowing this myself, knowing what we know about those that take on trans identities, the non-binary identity, I've talked to some detransitioners, and a lot of them who had been through this situation, it wasn't that they wanted to change sex. It wasn't that they were trans. It was that they just didn't want to be a girl. So most of the females, that's what we see in some of the females, they just don't want to be a girl. And so when you talk to a lot of, and it's not all of them have been abused or have trauma. Obviously there are some with genuine gender dysphoria, but you hear quite a bit when some of it's just going into puberty, being sexualized for the first time, and just not wanting to be a girl is what drives them to claim a trans identity. And we've talked about it quite a bit on the show. You can go watch quite a bit of my different videos. Just go watch the video that I did about Tamara Pritzky, who was the psychologist out of Washington, who blew the whistle on what was going on there. I think that should just tell you, like, they are not diagnosing the symptoms. They are simply throwing a trans identity. If you ever, this is the biggest issue that we have with affirmation only care. They're jumping right into and believing a transgender identity when there's so many other issues that should be looked at before that. There's so many different issues that There's so many different issues out there that need to be resolved before you can actually, determine whether it's genuine gender dysphoria. I had talked about a little bit yesterday that I don't, and we were talking about it a little bit online. I don't really believe in rapid onset gender dysphoria as being true dysphoria, right? Because a lot of times that's what happens when a child gets into teenage years and they start feeling off in their body, and then it's rapid. They've never experienced, they've never shown gender dysphoria in the past. It begs to me that it tells me that something else is going on there, right? Every transsexual that I know who is happy in their transition knew from about the time that they became self-aware at a very young age that something was different about them, and that they wanted, they had a desire to be the opposite sex. Generally knew that they weren't the opposite sex, and that's what their issue was, and that's what confused them most of their lives, is why would I want to be the opposite sex? I'm not, this isn't normal, type thing, right? So rapid onset gender dysphoria obviously is this whole thing where there's something else going on. When you hear people saying, I just figured this out like last week, I finally have words to put to this. It's really curious, right? Especially when you see that a bunch of people in their friend group have already started going through that, all that stuff. I mean, just literally watch. You can watch my when I was on Jubilee. You can watch the first episode, the episode with Blair and all them, and you have Alexander there, and you can just watch my reaction video because I discussed this in there. Is that Alexander literally said that he used to make fun of people who use different pronouns, neo-pronouns, were non-binary, all that stuff. And then he got a friend, he became friends with people in there, and then realized at that point that that's what he was non-binary, and so he moved away from the right. That's just not how this works. That's not how this works, like, at all. So the fact that claimed that that's what we're seeing a lot, and that's what I see a lot when you look at something as significant as rapid onset gender dysphoria. It's not real dysphoria, and that's why I don't really care for the term. I don't know exactly what I would call it, but it's not dysphoria. It's more of a fad, like being goth was when I grew up. Right? So you can be goth, you could be, I've been saying this for a very long time, that it's the goth. It was the goth to the emo to the scene kid to now non-binary. It's the reason why they all dress the same, look the same, cut their hair the same, all that stuff. It's all the same. The only difference is you have people medicalizing under this. It's a way to rebel, but also fit in with a friend group. Or you feel like an outcast and these people bring you in, right? That's why you don't see the cheerleaders, the football players. You don't see all those, the jocks necessarily transitioning until you look at the ones that are claiming a transsexual identity, and the males wanting to compete in female sports. That's a whole different issue in and of itself that we'll just kind of leave right there as well. But also, we'll get into the first story that we had in the title story of the episode, talking about Easter, which was yesterday. So if you are Christian and you celebrate Easter, actually, honestly, just everybody happy Easter. Especially if you're Christian and you celebrate. Versus Transgender Awareness Day. Okay. Let's talk about this for a second, though. Do I have that pulled up? I do. So, obviously, if you know Transgender Awareness Day or Trans Awareness Day, or wait, Trans Day of Visibility. Wow. Is there a Trans Awareness Day? One second. No, there's a Trans Awareness Month now. Okay. So confusing nowadays. Let's see. So we have, obviously, it was so Transgender Day of Visibility appears. Apparently, it's been March 31st since 2009, is what I think I read. And I've said this kind of at all of these times, right? I said this about Trans Awareness Month. I've said it about all these days. Can we just do away with them? And this isn't even just going to the LGBTQI plus awareness days. Like, I don't like these international whatever days because I think they're mostly useless. And so, yeah, Steve, you see, when you look at this chart I have pulled up here, when you look at this chart pulled up here, there I've checked at one point. There is a day, at least one day in every single month, except for December and January, that has to do with the LGBTQI plus community. At least one day in every single month except for January. And then you have you have the month of June, which is supposed to be all encompassing of all of this. And then you have now in California, at least now, November is now Trans Awareness Month. It's interesting because in Atlanta, we actually, our Pride Festival is in October because it's the largest one that coincides with International Coming Out Day. And it's like, what do these things seek to, what do they do? Like, the, especially, I mean, the trans community is not marginalized. Like, when you see the people, the politicians, the people of power coming out and recognizing you, from the president to the governor of New York to all these things, that shows you're not marginalized. Okay, you're not, like, you don't need these special days of the month or special days of the year, and especially not this many. So it's interesting. And now, if you want to hear how many there are, here is, if you know, we had Libby on the show, and she is my editor in chief over at the Post Millennial. She went down the days, so here you go. Let's see.
California has decided to make August Transgender History Month. This is the latest addition to an annual LGBTQIA calendar that includes National Black HIV/AIDS Awareness Day, Aromantic Spectrum Awareness Week, HIV is Not a Crime Awareness Day, Bisexual Health Awareness Month, National LGBT Health Awareness Week, National Women and Girls HIV/AIDS Awareness Day, National Native HIV/AIDS Awareness Day, International Transgender Day of Visibility, International Asexuality Day, National Youth HIV/AIDS Awareness Day, Day of Silence, National Transgender HIV Testing Day, Non-Binary Parents Day, Lesbian Visibility Day, International Family Equality Day, International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biphobia, National Asian and Pacific Islander HIV/AIDS Awareness Day, Harvey Milk Day, Pansexual and Panromantic Awareness and Visibility Day, LGBTQ Pride Month, LGBTQ Families Day, Pulse Remembrance, Anniversary of the Supreme Court's Bostock decision, Anniversary of the Supreme Court's decision legalizing gay marriage, National HIV Testing Day, Stonewall Day, Queer Youth of Faith Day, Non-Binary Awareness Week, International Non-Binary Peoples Day, International Drag Day, Gay Uncles Day, Southern HIV/AIDS Awareness Day, National
Gay
AIDS
Uncles Day.
Aging Awareness Day, Bisexual Plus Awareness Week, Celebrate Bisexuality Day, National Gay Men's HIV/AIDS Awareness Day, LGBTQ History Month, International Lesbian Day, Coming Out Day, National Latinx HIV/AIDS Awareness Day, National LGBT Center Awareness Day, International Pronouns Day, Glad Spirit Week, Asexual Awareness Week, Intersex Awareness Day, Transgender Parents Day, Transgender Awareness Week, Transgender Day of Remembrance, World AIDS Day, Pansexual Panromantic Pride Day, and HIV Cure Research Day. I don't know, guys. I just don't know if that's enough awareness.
Yeah. And actually that reminded me, so, and then that's not even counting. So think about that. That's not even counting. So all those are a lot different, but then you look at something like international, like Lesbians Day, and trans women have to be included in Lesbians Day, but even not even of those days of International Women's Day, trans women have to be included in that too. But you notice there isn't actually a International Men's Day that I'm aware of. So it doesn't make sense. However, as we saw this weekend, the International Day of Visibility, the Trans Day of Visibility, fell on Easter, and this caused quite the stir online. Now let's just kind of go into this, right? I think this is what really got me. We always know that when these things happen, like we knew that the president would come out and recognize international, like Trans Day of Visibility. That's kind of a given. But in there was a lot of misrepresentation by some on the right, saying that this was a day that the president had, like it was something special that the president had revealed, that it was like had now just now dawned that it was on Easter instead of making it some other day of the year. But as a lot of people pointed out, it just so happened to fall that day. However, there's a few things that kind of get me about this. So first thing is, where is it? This is the post from, this is what came from the White House on Friday. And if you know, I mean, Friday was Good Friday. So it is a holy holiday for Christians. So the fact that on Friday is the day that they chose to make this statement, that irks me a little bit. For that seems a little bit intentional to cause a stir online. I think some of this was intentional because they knew that it was to bait. Again, we've talked about this before too. I think some of what they do is to bait Republicans into speaking about this stuff. However, so they could have done it Saturday. They could have done it any other day last week, but they didn't. They did it on Friday. They did it on Good Friday. And this is what the president said. And this is actually just a snippet of the entire press briefing. It says, I, Joseph R. Biden Jr., President of the United States of America, by virtue of the authority vested in me by the Constitution, the laws of the United States, do hereby proclaim March 31st, 2024 as Transgender Day of Visibility. I call upon all Americans to join us in lifting up the lives and voices of transgender people throughout our nation and to work towards eliminating violence and discrimination based on gender identity. Not sex. That's the one thing that they don't say. It's based on gender identity, not sex. I don't care for this statement in and of itself, just because, well, one, we keep hearing all this stuff about violence against trans people. We know for the most part it's actually the crime rate and the murder rate of trans people is actually lower than the general population. And that's the percentage. So the White House puts this statement out. At the same time, they are putting out this statement that, so today actually was Easter Monday is what they called it. They do a Easter egg hunt at the White House, and they did an egg art contest at the White House today. But last week, they announced that there would be no, they were not going to allow religious they didn't have religious symbols in them. So if you really think about this, though, so taking away religious symbols from an Easter egg hunt kind of defeats the purpose of Easter, right? It defeats the purpose. I mean, believe it or not, Easter is a religious holiday. It is a holiday celebrated by Christians for the the day that Jesus rose from the dead. That is what it's there to commemorate. Usually you go to church and then you get with friends and family to celebrate the resurrection. So an Easter egg hunt without religious symbols is kind of it's kind of void of the purpose of the holiday in and of itself, right? So it says, yeah, so in addition to standard conditions that our designs must not be inappropriate, indecent, obscene, hateful, tortious, defamatory, slanderous, or libelous, and that it must not contain material that promotes bigotry, racism, hatred, harm against any group or individual, or promotes discrimination based on race, gender, religion, nationality, disability, sexual orientation, or age, are the prohibition on religious symbols and overtly religious themes. Now, one thing that people online, when I pointed this out, that this was really my issue with the whole thing. This statement comes out that they are not allowing religious displays, while at the same time recognizing Transgender Day of Visibility. It really, that's what rubbed me the wrong way. Not that he recognized the Transgender Day of Visibility, because we knew that would happen. It's going to happen every year that a Democrat's in office. It's just going to happen no matter what day it falls on. Now, we won't see another Transgender Day of Visibility fall on the same day as Easter until like 2080 or something like that, right? So we won't have this issue necessarily crop up, this same exact issue crop up again. But it just, like I said, it just rubbed me the wrong way. Now, what people also tried to point out online, however, is, the United States in the, they try to make the separation of church and state argument, which that's fine. If you want to make the argument of separation of church and state, then we should we should not be recognizing any religious holidays at the federal or at the governmental level. We shouldn't be giving days off at it shouldn't be a federal. I mean, then Easter and Christmas shouldn't be a federal holiday. If that's the way that you feel, then those days should not even be recognized by the government themselves, right? I don't necessarily agree with doing that, but if your argument is that we have a separation of church and state, then that's what you would probably believe. But the problem is these are federally recognized holidays, and so this was kind of a slap in the face to that, like you're not going to have anybody but Christians there, so who's it going to offend if there's a cross on an egg? Like it doesn't that doesn't make sense. Now they've said this has been, again, the left the media and everything like that has kind of they've been in spin drive. Let's see. Actually, here is, who is this? I want to say this is the person that actually helped organize this, and so she notes. So this is Elizabeth Alexander, says, FYI on all the misleading swirl re White House and Easter, the American Egg Board flyers standard non-discriminatory language request artwork that has been used for the last 45 years across Democrat and Republican admins for all White House Easter rolls, including previous administrations. Okay. I mean, it doesn't. So okay, it's not necessarily on the Biden administration that this happened. It is on the Biden administration that they did this on Good Friday again, though. They did they made the announcement on Good Friday. This kind of came to light on Good Friday. It also doesn't denote that they are also promoting Transgender Day of Visibility. So if you want to make the argument that again, separation of church and state, there are people out there, and you could argue that the queer community has become a religion and cultish institution in and of itself. I'm not necessarily saying that, though I do believe that there is an element to it. I think I would call it, I would call at least the far left queer community a cult. It has all the signs of a cult. I've literally written about this when it came to detransitioners leaving the cult and how that plays out and how they are very cult-like for that. You could call it a religion. However, I shy away from those terms. It shows all the makings of a religion. A belief in this postmodern neo-Marxism, right? That's where they would all hail to. But the problem, I shy away from that language simply because we have a separation of church and state. We have a First Amendment. And so if you give these people this recognition of being a religion, then you actually give them protections. It may mean that it can't be taught in schools, but you also give them protection that you can't. You just give them more power over them. You give it you give them more First Amendment protections that you would give, like, and actually you could create an organization around queer theory, give them other benefits, and that's just not a road that we necessarily want to go down. So I kind of shy away from calling it a religion, but it is a cult, and so that's where we are at with that. And so that's again what we're talking about there. However, but yeah. And then, like I talked about before, then you have like New York Governor Kathy Hochul, and a lot. What's really interesting, now I will say, okay, President Biden did come out on Easter and make a very quick statement about giving Easter, about the Easter holiday, and then made a much lengthier statement about Transgender Day of Awareness. What's really interesting, though, now, I guess at the Easter parade, or at the Easter celebration at the White House today, somebody asked President Biden about declaring Easter Transgender Day of Awareness. And he responded, "I didn't do that." And everybody's kind of asking, well, who did? Because, as this person points out, it's on the White House website. It's on your letterhead. So who did this? Now, let me go. I just saw this before we jumped in. But we're looking at, so from the Hill, the reporter had asked President Biden about Speaker of the House Mike Johnson's comments about Easter falling on the same day as Transgender Day of Visibility. Joe Biden says he's thoroughly uninformed. So obviously, Mike Johnson is going to criticize the president for the same stuff we're talking about here. He said, well, he's thoroughly uninformed about the criticism. And the reporter asked, uninformed how, ? Biden responded, "I didn't do that." And here's actually the statement from Mike Johnson was, "The White House has betrayed the central tenet of Easter, which is the resurrection of Christ, banning sacred truth and tradition while at the same time proclaiming Easter Sunday as Transgender Day is outrage and abhorrent. The American people are taking note." Like I said, I think we've kind of beat this horse to death a little bit, but to note that was the criticism, and he's saying, "I didn't do that." So maybe he's not understanding. I just think and again, there is a little bit of over outrage on both sides of this issue, but at the same time, I understand where it's coming from. I think that there's a big issue with when and how this stuff took place, how it happened. And I think the easiest thing to do is to get rid of all these International Day of whatevers. All they do, like, trans people, we know you're here. We're visible. Like, you can see me. We talk about trans issues every day. When it was like, I think it was Transgender Day of Awareness last year, I was like, or Month of Awareness, that when I was talking about that, I'm like, people are aware. Trans people make sure that they're aware every single day. So, everybody knows. So, which actually kind of leads me, let me pull this up real quick. It reminds me, as I'm talking about this, I do want to go down to something that I found out happened. Here we go. Yes. Okay. If y'all didn't know, I have finally made it. I was quoted by the Southern Poverty Law Center in a hit piece that they had about gays against groomers. And they actually quoted me pretty well. So here's what they actually said. So let's talk about this. Let's read this statement. because this is it's a badge of honor. Anytime, like if you know the Southern Poverty Law Center, when you're on their radar and they're using you as like in their hit pieces to as stuff you said as supposedly bad, you've kind of made it, right? So it says connecting the groups, and this is Gays Against Groomers, connecting the group's anti-inclusive education ideology, which motivates their opposition to LGBTQ plus subjects in public schools with radicalized fear on behalf of white children. Gays Against Groomers ambassador Sara Higdon. Now I've not been an official ambassador for Gays Against Groomers for quite some time. I do still maintain communication with the people with them over there, but I'm not actively involved in the organization. If you've noticed, I've done some stuff with them here in Georgia, with the chapter here in Georgia. I still appreciate the team, everything like that. I'm just not an official member of Gays Against Groomers. So to call me an ambassador still at this point is to ignore a bunch of changes within like the last year and a half. I mean, that's probably been how long it is. Now, again, I'm not saying this to disparage the group. I actually do appreciate Jamie and what the group has done, and what they continue to do. And I'm like I said, I still communicate with them regularly. I'm just not out here officially. I'm out here independent instead of with an organization at this time. So it also says is also sometimes listed as the communications director for Trans Against Groomers. Now, remember, again, I haven't been the Trans Against Groomers dissolved back into Gays Against Groomers about February of last year. So this is shows how what they're going off of here. But it says Sara has specifically claimed trans identity is most likely to develop among upper middle class white kids of progressive parents, even though trans people are more likely to identify as Latinx. Higdon claims critical theory in schools has conditioned these white children to believe they are an oppressor, and the only way to escape their oppressor status is to join an oppressed class by identifying as trans. It's a pretty good quote. And I did say that. And I do believe that. So, I mean, the link that they had was actually when I talked to who was that? The question was by, why am I drawing a blank on her name? I love her. She's great. The question though was, why is there no why is there nobody transitioning in the hood? And this is why this is what I described, and it's something we talk about quite a bit. I've written about this before, so it's not like this is like I said, it's a pretty good quote. I appreciate it. I appreciate the sentiment that you think this may be wrong, but I think it's actually. And so I do want to point out, they said that more trans people are likely to identify as Latinx. Well, nobody identifies as Latinx. If you watched our video, if you watched the video with that Free the People did about the Latinx files, nobody. Most Latino people consider Latinx to be offensive. So it's neither here nor there. So if you're talking about the Latino people, they're more likely to identify as Latino. That's it's interesting because I did go to that link because I was interested, and they said, and it shows that in accordance to the population, so per capita, there are more Latinos that identify as trans than whites, which is interesting. I would have actually thought Asians would be the highest, as we know in places like we know in Korea and in, why am I drawing blanks here now too? We know that in some Asian countries, ladyboys have been around for a very long time, right? So that's what I would have assumed would have been the highest per capita. But even still, per capita, the biggest numbers, the biggest social numbers, just because white people are a much larger percentage of the population, white people far outweigh the numbers. And it's and that's just here in the US though too, because we do have a melting pot here. Though I don't think that you would see those numbers overseas. You wouldn't see those in other countries the same way. You wouldn't see the number of people globally. You wouldn't see the number of people transitioning in, say, in any Latin America country. I don't think that you're going to see those numbers nearly as much. So I'm just saying. But I made it. The Southern Poverty Law Center, they write about you. Usually that's like I said, that's a badge of honor. It's great to see. But yeah, so next we are going to move to, this is something that everybody needs to be aware of. So the Department of Justice came out, is ordering Google to release the names and addresses of YouTubers who watch specific videos. So I'm sorry, y'all, if you watch this show, you may be on a list. Now, I doubt that they're looking for people who watch this show. I don't think I'm that. The Southern Poverty Law Center just learned who I was. I'm doubtful that they're watching my show, but even at the same time, this is highly unconstitutional. Everybody should be concerned that the Department of Justice is trying to go after people like this simply for watching YouTube content. Content of different videos and ordering Google to do so. Remember now, they said this type of stuff wasn't happening during the COVID years, right? Until we found out what was happening behind the scenes during with the Twitter files and how our government was coordinating with big tech to do this type of stuff. But it's highly suspicious. Now I'm going to play this clip for you so you can actually so you can hear what exactly they're talking about, what they're doing.
Order Google to hand over the names, addresses, telephone numbers, and user activity of those who watch certain YouTube videos. The feds were trying to track down a criminal and were apparently tracking you in the process. The senior national correspondent Kevin Cork is live in D.C. with big news about Big Brother. Kevin, good evening.
Evening, Trace. According to Forbes, the government asking Google to give up names, addresses, phone numbers, and user activity of all account users who accessed certain YouTube videos back in January of 2023, as you mentioned, as part of a larger criminal investigation. Now, in another instance, police also asked Google to provide a list of accounts that viewed and or interacted with YouTube live streams that could lead to information, again, on what they claim was a police search. Privacy experts tell Fox Business tonight this discovery is absolutely terrifying, saying it allows the police to target people for simply consuming content. Quote, "It's unconstitutional, it's terrifying, and it's happening every day. These YouTube warrants are just as chilling, allowing police to target people simply for the content they consume. No one should fear and knock at the door from police simply because of what YouTube's algorithm serves up." Now, the discovery also comes as Meta is said to be changing its algorithm to restrict Instagram users' access to political information And of course, as an upcoming Supreme Court ruling could set new standards for free speech. And while it's still unclear tonight if Google gave authorities the requested information, the company tells Fox Business this evening, quote, "We have a rigorous process designed to protect the privacy and constitutional rights of our users." It goes on, "We examine each demand for legal validity consistent with developing case law, and we routinely push back against overbroad or otherwise inappropriate demands for user data, including objecting to some demands entirely." Now, the DOJ tonight has yet to respond to our request for comment. It is a huge story, a bombshell, some would say, Trace, one that will obviously garner further examination.
So yeah, yeah, this is what we know. They try to do this stuff. They try to see what they can get away with, but this is like they said, it's highly unconstitutional to pull this information out just simply for the content that you consume on a public platform such as YouTube. Like if this was some dark website, you might there'd be a little bit different situation if it was if it was viewership of illegal activities such as child sexual abuse material or something like that, then there might be a reason to issue those warrants, but that there's still a potential and a probability of a severe government overreach on this. I don't trust the government to do any of this stuff. I don't trust the government to do. Yeah, I just don't trust the government. How about that? This is the type of stuff we need to watch out. We need to be aware of, cognizant of. We need to watch this stuff and call it out when it comes up. Which it kind of I'll mention now. Actually, I won't. I will mention it when we bring this up. I got some information coming up soon, but I'm not gonna announce anything quite yet until we do. Till the organization does that I'm working with. So the other one that everybody again needs to be aware of. Remember, they told us this stuff isn't happening, but New York City, in their comprehensive sex education for kindergartners, they are using a book that teaches that not all boys have penises and not all girls have vulvas. It's the what's the name of the book? Let me see. It's called "These Are My Eyes. These are my eyes. This is my nose. This is my vulva. These are my toes." And I pulled this straight from the We Teach New York City website. This is the third lesson that they give in their revamped HIV curriculum. Is a video to read this book aloud. It says to read it aloud, right? So what's interesting is this book doesn't. So what the advocates for these types of things say is that children need to know how to properly identify different parts of their body, so in case and so that they can properly identify where they were touched. If it serves as a foundation for teaching students about setting boundaries and reporting inappropriate touch to trusted adults, which that's valid. I think that children they need to know. They need to be able to communicate what's happened if they've been sexually abused. However, this book goes well beyond that. This book dives right into queer theory. This is not something that we should be teaching. This is like what we talked about, and it's based in their SEL curriculum. Now, if you remember, if you go back to, I can pull up the article that I wrote for Human Events about a year and a half ago about why SEL is a it's a social credit score, but it's also talking about it. This is like based in the SEL realm. And so this book, it teaches some girls wear dresses, some girls won't, some girls have vulvas, and some girls don't. That's teaching them again that, well, one, why would a young girl need to know, even if you believed in the whole trans child stuff, which I don't believe that you can have a trans child. But why would a child need to know what genitals somebody else has? Why would a 4 or 5-year-old need to know that? They wouldn't. So why would this book need to point that out? It wouldn't, unless they were expecting that children were going to look at other people's genitals. It's not. It also says some boys have penis, but not all boys do. To always use your manners, ask what may I call you. So again, now it's teaching children to ask pronouns. That's what that is. Because it says EJ is not a boy or a girl, so not he or she. To show you care, always use they, them, and theirs. So now 4 and 5-year-olds are using non-binary pronouns? Yeah, I don't think so. And you think this is valid? No. So while I think that children need to know how to correctly identify the parts of their body, I believe that the parents can teach them this. It is a parent's responsibility to teach them this. This isn't something, and this is so New York City can abide by. So this is the New York City public school says New York State. This is to abide by the New York State law. Why does? Okay, one second. Because it says. New York State law requires elementary school children to receive 5 lessons of health education every year. It recommends 45 minute class periods per week in grades kindergarten through 5th grade. Students are required to have lessons on HIV, 5 lessons on HIV per year as well. Why does a student need to know about HIV? Why does a 5-year-old need to know about HIV and AIDS? 5 years old? This is, like I said, this is state law. And so New York City is thinking that this is how you get, they are going to, do state, like abide by state law. But why even have a state law like that? Why would anybody under the age of 13 need to know about HIV? Except for that except for to maybe not like share blood with other people. Like if you get cut. See, this is the one thing that people need to know is if there is a student who has HIV for whatever reason, because we know that HIV can be contracted very young. I think you can be, correct me if I'm wrong. I may not be, may be wrong, but I believe you can be born. If you're born to a parent with HIV, you can actually be born with HIV. Don't quote me on that. I would have to look that up. I'm just kind of coming off the top of the head right now. So if that's the case, though, everybody needs to be aware of there needs to be some safeguards in place around that child, right? But I don't know. So Steve says, we learned about HIV, hepatitis. Let me see. Hepatitis in the drug abuse prevention stuff in 5th grade, transmitted via blood, sharing needles, sexual fluids. Yeah. That would be the type of, like, the place that you would talk about that. Older. Generally when during like when you would actually go through like sex ed, I think sex ed should be like, I personally believe that most sex ed just needs to be a biology class, unless you want to go more. Actually, Neil Wolf says, oh yeah, I forgot about DARE. Yeah, the DARE program, they talk about HIV because it's a bloodborne illness, and not to when it comes to doing drugs and stuff like that, with that's like that type of stuff's completely valid. I don't think it needs to be discussed with 5-year-olds. So yeah, this, like I said, this book, and it's right there in the picture. You can see this is what it looks like. This is leftist queer theory ideology pushed in, being pushed onto 5-year-olds. How do we undo this? You ask. I don't know. I don't know, because this is indoctrination from a very young age. Because most of us would not use they them pronouns. I honestly, the use of adults aren't gonna don't go do the pronoun ritual. I'm that actually gives like transsexuals like me, it can give them dysphoria, because that people are simply asking simply because of you. Like, even if I'm the only person there, it always makes me cringe if somebody asks me what my pronouns are. I'm like, you can look at me and you can know what I go by, and if you don't know, I really don't care what you call me. So don't guess, just go off of what the person appears as, or what your natural instincts would go by, and if that person really has an issue with it, they will correct you. So, insanity. We are at the top of the hour, though, so I didn't get to the squatters issues that we're having in this country right now. And actually, interestingly enough, Atlanta has one of the worst squatters problem in the country, in the red state. So when we talk about it, it's not just but DeSantis in Florida did a quick switch, and that's what I was going to talk about. Was actually, Anna Kasparian gave DeSantis a lot of credit, and she's been getting a lot of flack by the left for even acknowledging that that they did something good, and they passed a bill criminalizing squatting, and so that people can't just come and sit in your house. Again, this was actually pretty big. We're just doing a quick rundown here. So, Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg, says he doesn't know if he'll ever run for elected office again, which is really interesting, because I've been kind of, I've been very critical. I mean, I did a video back in 2021 when he was mysteriously missing, very absent, while the ports and the supply chain was completely backed up, and we were running out of stuff on our shelves and everything like that. And look, people always ask me what my background is, and you know, I have a degree in logistics management, and I worked 7.5 years as a logistics officer, 2 years, and then 2 years in the private sector. So I know a little bit about transportation and the supply chain. I actually have more experience in the supply chain than somebody like Pete Buttigieg, which tells you everything you need to know. But he's had a rough go of it. Like I would have said the Secretary of Transportation doesn't do much. Things just kind of run. Because of Pete Buttigieg, I have now understood, just what happens when somebody does that job poorly. When I was on Timcast the first time last year, I mentioned it was right after the East Palestine, Ohio train disaster, and it was I had discussed. I mean, he was kind of nowhere to be found during that too, and I don't think the Biden administration was. I made the joke that where is he? And I said, they just don't want to admit that a small town mayor that was hired for one single reason isn't doing a good job. I think that they have been grooming him, and not in the sense that we talk about it too much, but I think that they have been grooming him to develop him. The other use of the term, to develop him, and so that he would be the first gay president of the United States. I think that they were expecting that he would want to run, but not going to happen. Because like I said, he hasn't been doing great. And somebody actually was talking to me about all these accomplishments that he's had this weekend. It was a leftist trying to tell me all these accomplishments. And one of the things that they had talked about was his getting this infrastructure bill passed, right? The big Biden administration infrastructure bill that really doesn't do much for infrastructure with your stolen money. But what we found out this weekend too, it was actually after that, I found this out on Saturday after I had talked to this person. But they allocated $7.5 billion to buy 20,000 electronic vehicle charging stations across 5,000 actual stations. Only 7 of those stations have been completed to be. So there was what did I say? There's only 38 spots available. There was expected to be 5,000 or 20,000. There's only 38 spots available in 7. And this was passed 2 years ago. What are they doing with this money that they've allocated? The stolen tax money from you, this is what it's doing. It's sitting there, not doing anything. Where is this going? What's going on? Like I said, Pete Buttigieg just not doing a good job. Other news, I actually wanted to share this laugh with y'all. I think y'all will find this hilarious. So I'm going to end on this one, right? This fat queer stuff. If you didn't know, also, I just want to point this out. This will be the last in the rundown. J.K. Rowling in Scotland today, their hate speech law went into effect. So J.K. Rowling's been out there daring them to arrest her on Twitter for speaking her mind, which good for her. She's been under. You can't be silent when these people try to take away your free speech, and that's what she's doing. And so I applaud her effort over there. Will they arrest her? I doubt it. It was funny. Somebody said that she's missing the plot. This brilliant writer is the one that's missing the plot here. I don't think so. So Yeah, J.K. Rowling dares police to arrest her for misgendering after Scotland's hate crime law takes effect. In a tweet, she actually posted this person who is obviously threatening people with an axe here, and in the post, and Rowling says Scotland's hate crime act comes into effect today. Women gain no additional protections, of course, but well-known trans activist Beth Douglas daring of prominent Scottish politicians falls within protected category. And that was a whole thread, 11-piece thread of where she went down and showed just more of that stuff. So applause to J.K. Rowling here. I support you speaking freely, even if we may disagree on stuff. You had the right to speak freely, and I think the any hate crime or hate speech law, any hate speech laws, any laws that suppress free speech, as long as it's not violent threats, hate speech is protected speech. Because there's no, if it wasn't protected speech, it could be the worst speech in it could be the worst speech out there. But the reason you can disagree with it all day, every day, but the reason we have protections on free speech is not for speech you agree with; it's for speech you disagree with. I think everybody needs to remember that. That's why I support I don't support any legislation against free speech. That's why. But back to the Queer Fat Club, and this will just kind of point out some of the hypocrisies in the queer movement, right? So we'll just watch this and have a little laugh, right? Let's see.
This is a Queer Fat Club.
I'm queer and fat.
Okay, thank you for joining. We're just introducing ourselves at the moment.
Okay.
I'm sorry, 1 second.
Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, Joe? This is a Queer Fat Club.
I'm queer and fat.
Okay, thank you for joining. We're just introducing ourselves at the moment.
Okay.
Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, Joe?
Yeah, my name's Joe. I go by he, they, and I identify as 275 pounds.
Okay. Okay.
I feel like Jay's kind of making fun of me, though. I know it's kind of a shock. I know, kind of a new thing.
I'm just,
Do what?
I said I apologize.
Oh, no, you're good.
Are you comfortable leaving the group at the moment?
Why?
I'm not understanding why you're joining the group.
This is the queer and fat group now.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I came here for.
Okay. And you said you identify as fat?
Yeah.
Okay. This is just for fat-bodied people.
Yeah, I understand. I identify as a fat-bodied person.
I'm not understanding where you're coming from.
Are you guys comfortable with me here? I mean, I'm pretty chill on my end.
I'm not comfortable, no.
Can we take like a vote?
Queer, you can identify as anything, but you can't identify as fat. Interesting. I think it makes a good point. Makes a point for me. So I just want to leave you with that. Okay. Oh, good troll job by this person. I mean, they don't understand. How do you not understand that a person, if a person can identify as whatever they want, then they can identify as fat? And you may say, Sarah, how can you endorse this? Well, I don't identify as a woman. I don't. I'm not a woman. I'm a trans woman, which is a subsection of man because I'm a male. You can't change that. So I'll move on from there. So it's a good point, and I want to thank everybody for joining. Go make sure you check out my video, like I said at the top of the hour, posted on you can go into my under my highlights if you're on Twitter, or it's my last posted video on YouTube. But go check out that video. It's important. It's an important one for people to watch. And yeah, and then if you haven't already, make sure you click the like and subscribe button below. Follow me across all social media platforms, and I will see you next time.